Everybody, today I'm in Brownsburg, Indiana, and I'm actually on the trailhead for the B&O trail that runs through Brownsburg. And I'm gonna walk along the trail a little bit and talk to you about some of the pros and the cons of living in Brownsburg, Indiana, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, I'm Jason Compton with the Compton Home Group. Welcome back to the channel. If you want to know everything there is to know about living in a place like Brownsburg, Indiana, or Indianapolis, Indiana, or any of the surrounding cities and towns, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the little bell so you're notified every time we do a new video. Now, we have people reaching out to us from all over the country with questions, of course, about places like Brownsburg and absolutely Indianapolis and all the surrounding towns and cities. So if you have questions at all about any of those locations around Indianapolis or Indianapolis itself, then make sure you reach out to us any way that you know how. We'll always have your back with those questions, and we'll certainly have your back when it comes time for you to make your move to the Indy Metro. So I am in Brownsburg, Indiana, along the B&O Trail, which is a super cool trail that goes through Brownsburg. It's just over 6 miles or so, and it's paved, so it's not a dirt trail or anything like that, but a nice paved trail. And it comes from the old Baltimore and Ohio railroad corridor that went through Indiana. So there are different parts of it and different places that are paved, and become a trail. Not everywhere, but certainly through Brownsburg, you've got this nice little over 6 mile trail paved through here, and can get a lot of foot traffic and a lot of people rolling through here on their bike and stroller and things like that. So anyway, this town, this Brownsburg, is what we're going to talk about today. So the pros and the cons of living in a place like Brownsburg. So let's start with the pros. So pro number one for Brownsburg, when people are looking at Indianapolis or some of the surrounding suburbs around Indianapolis and trying to figure out, is this going to be a place for me? Is it going to be a place that might be a fit for my lifestyle? And of course, most people's budget isn't endless. They want to know that I'm going to live in a nice place, I'm going to live in a safe place, I'm going to live in a place with really highly rated schools, but I don't have an unlimited budget. Well, Brownsburg is a very affordable place to live. The median home sale price in Brownsburg is under $300,000. So it's one of the more affordable suburbs that surround Indianapolis. There are definitely more expensive ones. You know, the two most expensive would be Zionsville and Carmel. And, you know, when you're trying to get in there, if you're under $400,000, that's really pretty much exceptionally difficult to get in. It's very, very competitive. But under $400,000 in Brownsburg, it's really quite doable. And of course, you can spend more than that. There are lots of really nice homes in Brownsburg, but you don't have to. So it is one of the more affordable places, and it's going to check off a lot of those other boxes as far as being a nice place to live and also a safe place to live with really great schools. Then number two, so this particular pro isn't necessarily something that I'd say is really objective. It could be one of those things that, you know, it's a matter of opinion really, but the location for Brownsburg, I feel like, is a pretty good advantage. So of course, you know, if you have to live on the east side of Indianapolis, it's going to be terrible for you. And it's on the far northwest side, or a little bit more west than anything. And I-74 is the major interstate that connects Brownsburg with Indianapolis. So it's really nice to have that there. So the access from Indianapolis to Brownsburg and vice versa is really fairly simple. It's also relatively close to the airport. So if you need to get to the Indianapolis International Airport quickly, Brownsburg isn't all that bad. It's going to be under 30 minutes for you to actually get there. So if you had to be there weekly or monthly, it could be a reasonable place. And even if you worked downtown Indianapolis, maybe not the absolute best location, but certainly not the worst for living outside of the city and still getting to Indianapolis. So again, that's very, very subjective. It's not a nailed down thing was the location, whether it's good for somebody or not, but the location near Eagle Creek Park, I feel like, is an advantage. That's one of the pros of it. And Eagle Creek Park, it's one of the Indianapolis parks, but it's one of the biggest municipal parks in the entire country, right there in Indianapolis. Walk over here in the shade a little bit and make sure nobody's gonna run me over. So it has nearly 1,900 acres of water, so a giant reservoir, and then almost 4,000 acres of actual park space and land. It is giant. It is a super cool park with tons and tons of trails, lots to do within the park. And Brownsburg is literally just down the road from it. So that's the big advantage that I see with the location of Brownsburg, outside of anything else that could be sort of a judgment call for each person even being close to the park is probably a judgment call for people, but if you like that kind of thing, you like being near giant parks like that, then it is fantastic. It's a place that you plan to visit a lot during the year. It's a place you can get a yearly pass and just pop in and out. Otherwise, you got to pay a daily fee to get in there, although it's not terribly expensive. But if it's something that you do quite often, it could be a super cool place to be. And the third pro is actually something I kind of touched on really with the first one, honestly, is that if you have a family and you're looking for that affordable place to live around Indianapolis, you can't spend $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 on a place, and you want a little bit more choice with something that's less than that as far as the price is concerned, but you want safety and you're concerned about schools. You want to make sure that the schools are really super highly rated for your kids and the place is generally family friendly, then Brownsburg is a place that you should absolutely consider looking at. It's a place I think that flies under the radar a lot. There are other suburbs around Indianapolis that really get a lot of the notoriety, or certainly a lot more popular. Places like Zionsville and Carmel and Fishers and Westfield and Noblesville, all the northern suburbs, they're very, very popular. And for very good reason. They have a lot to offer. They are really nice places. But places like this with Brownsburg, or even nearby Plainfield and Avon, they have a lot to offer as well. And so I feel like they're kind of just off here in the shadow a little bit, and when people come over and really start to explore them a little bit more, they find that, hey, these places are really phenomenal and they're great places for families. So you do have the safety, you do have the great schools and the whole family-friendly vibe in a place like Brownsburg. So that is absolutely a pro for it, and it's something that you should consider if you're open to moving into different areas around Indianapolis. Now, getting into some of the cons about Brownsburg, because yeah, it definitely has some cons, but these are things I think that can be improved upon and will be improved upon as time goes by here, as Brownsburg grows. It's not growing at an exponential rate or as fast as some places around Indianapolis, but it is growing. It will be bigger in 10 years, and of course bigger in 20 years as well. At least that's the projection for Brownsburg. But the downtown area of Brownsburg, and I always feel like the downtown area of any city or town is actually not the most important thing by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a little bit important because it is a place where you can centralize a lot of activities for a town or a city. You can have a culture built up in the downtown area of a town or a city. It's just a little bit easier to do that. A place where you can have festivals, you can have concerts, you can have farmers markets, you can have a number of different things that bring people together. So Brownsburg has one, although the older historic portion of Brownsburg in the downtown area is very, very small, and being very small doesn't have a lot of opportunity for growth and a lot of things that are going to be going on. So there's an extension, though, of Brownsburg's downtown that is much newer. And so that's been developed really kind of with that in mind, to help to create a little bit more of that cultural heart. But it's not big. It's not big at all. If you were to compare it to, of course, downtown Indianapolis, that's not even close to a fair comparison, but even a place like Zionsville. Zionsville's absolutely has some character. It absolutely has a heart, and it has a theme essentially running through there. And you can feel it, and it's definitely a place that's very popular for people who live in Zionsville, and actually even close to Zionsville. But Zionsville is not a big place, just like Brownsburg isn't a big place. So they have that there, and it's one of the charms of Zionsville, and it's one of the things that people like about it. And with Brownsburg, I just wish that it had a little bit more of that, because I think if it did, then it would start to bring a little bit more of that same type of charm that a small town like Zionsville has to a place like Brownsburg. So not necessarily a giant con, but it's certainly something that if you were here long enough and you started comparing Brownsburg to other places, then you might notice. Con number 2 is that Brownsburg being the size that it is, it would be nice to have a little bit more park space. Now it does have a decent amount of park space right now, but with Arbuckles Park and Williams Park, but as a place like Brownsburg grows, it will need more. So you can look at some other suburbs around Indianapolis, and acre for acre, Brownsburg may not really match what they have. It's a little bit smaller. Again, it's not a place that's completely devoid of parks, And you got to remember, of course, too, that it's right next to Indianapolis' largest park at Eagle Creek Park. So that's kind of nice having that right next door, that, close to 4,000 acres, which is going to blow everybody else completely out of the water, just right down the road. But within Brownsburg itself, there aren't a lot of really huge, nice parks to go to. So I did mention Arbuckle and Williams, they're great parks for sure. But Brownsburg, as it grows, is probably going to need a little bit more of its own park space and places for, of course, families to go. And the third con for Brownsburg. So Brownsburg is not going to be the most exciting place to live, but that could be said about a lot of places. It's not Los Angeles. It's not New York. It's not Miami. It's not this super glitzy city that just demands attention because it's throwing all of this glitz out there all of the time. It's a quiet place. It's a great place for families. It's a great place to raise a family. It's not a place that's going to be loud and obnoxious. It's not a place that's going to have a ton of original shops and restaurants. You're going to have the typical stuff here. You will have some original shops and restaurants, but chains, things like that, they're going to dominate more than really anything else. So it's not going to be the most exciting place. And if you're looking for a lot more excitement than a place like Brownsburg, it's probably not for you. So while I'm considering that a con in this, because there are a lot of people who want something to do all the time, just things going on constantly, Brownsburg is probably not going to be that place. It'll have plenty of things that you can do throughout the year with your family, but outside of that, it's not going to be crazy. So if you're looking for excitement, if you're looking for a really, really fast pace or a faster pace type of life, then Brownsburg is probably just not your place. So there you go. There are 3 pros, 3 cons about Brownsburg, Indiana. So if you have any questions about any of those and what some of the other pros or what some of the other cons might actually be for Brownsburg, then be sure that you reach out. And until the next one, we'll see you later.